Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and a wife team go over all the characters, storylines, world building, and other such things in video games, because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
I was about to go into the whole buddy thing, but he's not here.
No.
We've adjusted our recording schedule a little bit.
Yes.
So this is episode 36.
Yes.
We made it. We've come a long way.
We're part of a great network, which you should join our Discord for Boss Rush Games, because that's awesome. And I feel like we have like a little community that's forming around us, and it just makes me so happy. Even though we're not like big time, but we're making people's lives happy, and it makes me happy.
Can I say how surprised I am that it's taken us 36 episodes to get to this series?
No, I feel like this was one we wanted to savor. Like, this is one we wanted to...
Well, we're going to do a two-parter on it.
Ooh.
As our first glimpse into it. And I'm breaking the way I usually do things. If you'd like to contact us, you can do that on Twitter at LoreTogether, on Instagram at LoreTogether, through email at LoreTogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/LoreTogether, where you can pay a per episode pledge to get early access to episodes, mini episodes, Q&As, and other things we may be doing in the future.
You have to note, now we're doing things a little differently because I definitely know what we're doing.
This is true. Safi has played all the games. You haven't completed all of them, though, but you've played all of them.
The only one I haven't completed at this point is Andromeda, just because it was on your computer.
Yeah. Did you beat 3? Oh, no, you beat 3. You just never beat Citadel.
I never had the party scene for Citadel. That's what happened.
Okay, so we haven't actually even talked about what we're talking about yet. We're talking about Mass Effect.
Well, if you've read the title of the episode, you know it's Mass Effect. It's just, for us, it's a very special series. It is actually one of the things we played when we were first dating. Basically, Mystic would do all the gameplay because it was on his Xbox, and I'm really bad with a controller, and I would make all the character choices.
Yep.
So it's a very special game. We're very big into science and sci-fi, so that was another thing.
The funny thing is, when I first had a 360, I had a roommate who picked up Assassin's Creed, which is another series we'll have to cover eventually.
Yeah.
And
that's a trippy one too.
He was like, "Hey, we should go get another game." I'm like, "Okay, cool. What do you want to get rid of?" And he was like, "I don't know what to get rid of." I said, "You're not really playing that Assassin's Creed thing. You only played it for like 2 hours. You want to just get rid of it?" Because we had bought it used.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "All right, let's go trade it in towards another game." And I don't remember what store we went to. It wasn't GameStop, but the store doesn't exist anymore. It's just one of those other gaming stores that existed.
Yeah, like Funko Land or something?
No, it was attached to Hollywood Video.
Oh, that's, ancient history at this point.
So we went there. We traded in Assassin's Creed for Mass Effect, even though neither of us had known about it, BioWare, or anything.
Wow.
We were just like, "Oh, that looks interesting. Let's try that out." And honestly, the character creator is what sold me. Because we didn't know anything about it, so we just started playing it. And the fact that it jumps you into character creation in-universe in a way, where it's like, data corruption, please recompile your...
It's really compelling, yeah.
I played it, and at the time I had this big, huge projector screen that I was playing my 360 games on. And one of my best friends came over, and he saw it. And he immediately went out after we were playing this and bought a 360 and the game to play it.
I think I know who you're talking about too, and that does not surprise me. Meanwhile, around the same time, my brother was the main gamer when I was a teenager up through most of college. And I would play video games here or there, but I wasn't a gamer yet. I call myself a gamer now. And I'm not nearly as frequent as some other people. But I would watch my brother play this, and he was super engaged. I mean, he made a character that looked kind of like him. And then when we met, and like you said you had it, I was interested because my brother was super into it. He was super into driving around on the Mako and some of the parts. I remembered certain things.
We're tossing a lot of terms out there for people who have no idea what any of this is.
It's, hey, hang in there. We're going to explain as much as we can. The Mako is a vehicle. That's what you need to know about
Surprisingly, I'm not actually getting into the games themselves in these 2 episodes.
So now, before we gush any further, what are you actually getting into?
So we're going to cover a little bit of... So I didn't want to give any big, huge, overarching plot points away. Because that feels kind of rude, considering there are some people who are just playing this for the first time.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So we're going to do a crash course on the Citadel Council history up through humanity.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to do next episode a look at the history of one character in particular, David Anderson.
Yay!
Through the book Mass Effect Revelation. Both of those are before the first game. So you're not going to get any spoilers for the game itself. You'll just get some spoilers on like what characters could tell you about their race and stuff like that.
Yeah, essentially you might get some codex spoilers, which...
Mass Effect as a series is both really easy to get lore for, and yet really hard at the same time for one reason. So it's very easy because of the codex. The codex is great. I've actually just listened to the codex.
Well, especially the first game. They didn't do it in the next 2 games, but
they had the codex.
But they didn't have the voice acting for it, did they?
They did. It sounds different, though. I will grant that.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it difficult is, particularly in the second game, you may remember this, when you start the game, before you load, there would be a screen to the side of the main menu with Cerberus Daily News on it.
Oh, yeah.
With in-universe news articles.
Yes.
That had no ramifications in the game. They were just like little snippets of world building that would show up.
Some writers had some fun, and there it was.
Well, some of these are kind of great. Like there's this multi-part saga about this thing called the Manswell Expedition, which was this business, this venture capitalist or this businessman was tired of how slow the governments were getting space travel out. So in 2070, he's like, I'm going to fund this. And he funded a cryostasis expedition to Alpha Centauri with 300 colonists that got lost. They got found again 110 years later when they met an alien for the first time. Humans didn't discover them. An alien discovered them that's part of the Citadel.
Oh, wow.
And they were captured. So this became a thing for like 5 or 6 days of updates. You had this continuing saga of what this lost colony was doing. But that's it.
Crap.
Then it ends with something like sociologists are going to be working with the colonists to reintegrate them or whatever. Because they had no idea what was going on in the rest of the galaxy.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
So it ends up leaving a lot of questions and a lot of world building. You're like, I want to know that story more.
That they should have written that book is essentially what you're telling me.
When it comes to Mass Effect books, there's 3 of them. If you ever mention a 4th one, it never happened.
Oh, dear. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was one book that has been stricken from the canon because it was so poorly received, and I don't think they've released a revision of it yet.
No.
And it's been years, so I don't expect them to.
Yeah. You got to be careful when it comes to your book releases. You really, I think for the Dragon Age stuff, they basically, writers of the games wrote the books. That's probably the better thing to do because they have more access to the stuff they need and a better understanding of it. I want to say
the first 3 books, Revelation, Ascension, and Redemption, I think, were all written by Drew Karpyshyn. He was one of the lead writers for Mass Effect 1 and 2.
Yes.
But should we just jump into this? Let's just jump into this.
We could talk about all the nitty-gritty of this forever, guys, and we may go on
Let's
tangents.
catch everyone up on all the stuff we just talked about.
Yes.
So, after investigating the, quote, Bermuda Triangle-like reputation of the southern Martian pole, a mining team unearthed the subterranean ruins of an ancient alien research station.
Bum, bum, bum.
Revealing incontrovertible proof of the existence of alien life.
On Mars, no less.
So here's the thing. We're going to get a little bit political for this little sentence here.
Lore together, getting political because the games force us to do so.
We can't convince people now that there are people who are dying of a virus now. And there's incontrovertible proof that aliens existed that people believe. You can't convince people that we walked on the moon or that the Earth is not flat.
So I think it's going to be different in how people perceive information in media because I think it's a generational thing. And I think once we're getting better at information literacy, there will always be people who will not believe what is right in front of them, but it may be less of what it is now And
Incontrovertible proof. So
yeah.
something so damning that, let's just say, the general populace at large accepts it.
Well, I would think you'd have somebody who's like a figure, like maybe not necessarily a Fauci, but somebody of that stature in a scientific field who's known
like,
for
again,
talking
the
to
general
public.
population of Earth goes, that's proof. Vast majority of the population believes that this is real, and the impact is profound in all areas of human culture, nowhere more so than religion. New beliefs sprang up overnight, such as the interventionary evolutionist, who zealously proclaimed the discovery as proof that all human history had been directed and controlled by the aliens, who were called Protheans.
Hence, Halo.
Hence a lot of
sci-fi stories. Yeah, exactly. But Halo's the one we've actually covered. So
yeah. Even established religions struggled to explain extraterrestrial life. Some tried to incorporate this newfound knowledge into their dogma. Some remained silent, while a few tried to stubbornly deny the evidence found on Mars. That's where...
that's the one I know we would... I have guesses on which one, like... Let's be honest, being raised Catholic, the Catholics are just to ignore it. We're just gonna ignore it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Within a year of the discovery, Earth's 18 largest nations, they do not give a list,
oh, cool,
had drafted and ratified the Systems Alliance Charter, establishing a representative political body to expand and defend human territory.
I really like how they kept that part vague.
Shortly thereafter, the various nations of Earth pooled their military resources to create the Systems Alliance military. The same year, 2149, the Alliance discovered that Charon was not a simple moon of Pluto, but was in fact an alien artifact known as a mass relay. Probe sent through... Okay, so first off, mass relay was the thing that they knew was going to happen when they translated these archives that they discovered on Mars.
Oh, so, they translated them too.
They had some idea. It wasn't like a full translation, but we had some idea of what was being discussed. And we actually had started to understand some of the technology that it was feeding us and everything. So, probe sent through, the relay fell out of contact. Not surprising. They are, according to theory, they would be traveling light years away. So a human expedition was sent through, captained by John Grissom.
John Grissom. That's definitely a, like, her man's band kind of name.
Pretty much, I believe. So they did a lot of interesting naming when it comes to this, because you have John Grissom, who I think is named for Gus Grissom.
Gus Grissom.
Astronaut. I believe he's one of the ones who died in the Apollo 1 fire.
Wow.
You have Shepard, who we're not going to actually even get to in these two episodes.
But also named after Alan Shepard. He was the first one to go into orbit, if I remember correctly. He was the first one to go into space. I believe so.
Alan Shepard was also booted from Apollo 13, so he lucked out.
Ooh, yeah.
If you ever seen Apollo 13, the movie,
yeah,
it's fairly factual. There was some stuff that's kind of made up.
The wedding ring part is definitely made up.
No, actually, that's real.
Seriously?
Yeah. If you listen to the commentary with the levels, they say everyone says it's made up, and she goes, "No, that really happened."
Oh my God.
But some of the stuff on the ship of like the infighting and stuff is Hollywood.
That makes it... Well, you got to build tension. And I will give you that. That it's not nearly as bad as some other based on a true story movies.
Yeah. But the line that Jim Lovell gives when he finds out he's going to be on Apollo 13 is that Alan Shepard's ear infection flared up.
Oh.
So everyone got bumped up to the next flight.
Gosh, and that, yeah. And he got an ear infection at the right time. Yikes.
So anyway, they go through the mass relay, and they find that the mass relay has taken them to Arcturus, which is a red giant about 36.7 light years from our sun.
Okay.
Arcturus would eventually become the Systems Alliance HQ, and Arcturus Station would be built around the star, finally being completed in 2156.
Well, they made short time on that.
By this point, before we discovered FTL drives, we had already had numerous colonies throughout the Sol system.
Right.
So building a station probably wasn't that hard.
Well, they'd have to transport all the resources.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of it logistically. Logistically, that's very impressive.
Humanity founded 3 colonies in 2152, Demeter, Terra Nova, and Eden Prime. Now, Demeter I had no idea about until I started researching this
Demeter
timeline.
or Demeter? Like the...
I've heard both pronunciations.
Yeah, I don't know which one is the correct one because I thought I was taught Demeter for the goddess, but
But that one was the first one
okay.
and was funded by a company.
Oh, so it's a private entity.
Yeah. In 2157, David Anderson graduates officer training from Arcturus as a second lieutenant and is one of the first N7s. N7 is a particular, operative.
Yeah, and if for those of you who are not fans of the game, you may have seen people that are fans of Mass Effect have N7
Yes.
jackets, badges, clothing.
N7 is
gear.
basically like top tier within the Systems Alliance military in terms of your special ops or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's an elite level of soldier.
So John Grissom is traveling to Arcturus to give a speech to this first graduating class, kind of.
Manly man discovery speech. Yeah.
He really is kind of like the manly man, the tough, no nonsense, 1950s.
Just being a Western person, you can't have a character named John Grissom and not at least play into the expectation of him being manly man.
Well, he's also, by this point, he was always kind of tough, intelligent, no nonsense. Since his trip through the relay and back and becoming this hero and this icon, he's had to deal with the paparazzi and all this other stuff and all the politics and just kind of jades him. We'll get more into Grissom next episode, but as he's traveling to Arcturus to give this speech, he gets word of first contact.
Oh.
Humanity made contact with an alien species. It was actually an engagement.
Oh.
And...
Oh, like fighting each other.
Yeah.
Then.
The first group was completely wiped out.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing about this because in the first game, it's a big deal.
It's a minor deal.
It's a big deal culturally to humans, I should say.
So this is kind of the first contact war.
Yes.
Or what is called the Relay 314 incident to everyone else.
Yeah.
And we'll touch back on that soon, but the important things to know are the aliens that we make contact with are called the Turians.
Yes.
The Turians ended up coming through the relay, not the Sol relay, a different relay, and taking over the colony of Shaanxi.
Okay.
Which I can't tell you when it was founded because that information was not in the wiki.
Nabbit.
The other three were there. I kept looking. I'm like, when was it? Okay. So they're basically blockading Shaanxi, but they're strike team, fire teams are taking out Turians, and they are taking the Turians in return are taking out whole blocks to take out a small strike team.
Oh, and that's if you know the Turians, that is exactly what you can expect from their military.
Right. So General Williams, who is in charge of the army and the forces who are there, the Alliance people who are there, surrenders.
Yeah.
Everyone's dying. Everyone's starving. They're blockaded in. Why? Why keep fighting? Eventually, the Alliance does take Shaanxi back when the Second Fleet arrives, and the humans and Turians both kind of start prepping for war.
Yeah.
When the Citadel Council steps in, and now we should cover the Citadel and the Council and all that fun stuff.
Yay, fun stuff.
So why were the humans attacked when they were trying to basically, the humans were trying to activate a relay. Why was that cause for the Turians to attack them? And that's a long answer with a lot of history. So we're going to start with the very first part when, in 580 BCE...
Yeah, I mean, okay, fair.
When the Asari discover the Citadel. What is the Citadel? The Citadel is a giant space station. We're talking dozens of kilometers of space all over the space station.
Yeah, it basically, I would think the landmass that's usable there is about the size of a planet because of the way
I don't think it's quite that large.
Well, not necessarily planet Earth.
Right. It holds... When we get to it in the first game, I believe it's 13 million people.
Yeah.
So it's maybe the size of a megalopolis, like if you had a massively combined city.
Right.
Yeah. Who are the Asari? The Asari are a long-lived, monogendered, all-female race of biotics. We'll get to biotics later. But basically, magic users.
Yeah, it's essentially
It's sci-fi magic.
It's sci-fi magic. There's an explanation for it, and the magic that they use technically was something discovered merely a decade or two before by humans before they even had first contact, if I remember correctly. Because
Yeah, I was going to cover this later, but I'll cover it now because it makes more sense now, actually. There is this element called
Yes.
Element Zero, or EZO.
yeah,
It is not called that by anyone but the humans,
right. Everybody else,
and it's not an element.
yeah,
It's just this material that, in certain people, it allows them to manipulate dark energy.
and for humans, you have to have been into certain circumstances to even be able to.
You have to be
do
exposed
that.
to it
Yeah,
in certain forms, and then you have to be lucky enough that it doesn't just become cancer.
right.
EZO is also when you apply electricity to it, it can allow you to change the gravity and the fields, the dark energy in the area. So it's used for ship propulsion, it's used in the relays, it's used for energy, it's used for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and there was and the background of one of the characters you meet in the first game is about him being the weird kid who can use biotics.
Yeah.
So
520 BCE, the Solarians discover the Citadel. Now, the Solarians are an amphibious matriarchal race that are very much into the whole science thing.
and extremely short-lived.
Extremely short-lived compared
the
to most of the races, actually.
and especially to the Asari. So we're talking about, I think Solarians live at most
I think it's 40 or 50.
years. Yeah, 40,
Yeah.
maybe 50 years. And the Asari live basically an
I think
eon.
1,000. Yeah.
So just the idea that
Order of magnitude of difference.
yeah, the idea that these two met and hung out and
yeah.
figured stuff
Well,
out together.
So the Asari had the place for 60 years.
Yeah, only 60 years too when you think about it.
Yeah. And the Solarians discover in 520 BCE. In 500 BCE, both races decide to colonize the Citadel and establish the Council. This is year zero in the galactic calendar, though nobody calls it that.
I mean, I think in the game, since you're human, you refer to things in
Yeah.
human time.
Interesting thing, I kind of didn't know about this. I kept finding these things, but I had no idea what they were in the games when I was playing. In a gesture of openness, given these new relations and stuff, the Solarians opened the records of the League of One, which is this basically top-tier Solarian intelligence group for the Asari to kind of, here's our top intelligence people and everything.
That's really trusting of them.
Yeah.
Maybe because they're our allies and they live longer than we do. Maybe they'll be able to do more with it.
Yeah. The League of One members didn't take too kindly to this.
Oh yeah, because that means it reveals their identities and their projects.
And
that's
started
a big
assassinating
deal.
members of the Solarian Union.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Solarians send the STG, the Special Task Group, which is another Solarian intel group,
Yeah.
they basically send them in to hunt down these League of One members, and we're not 100% sure that whether they were successful or not.
Interesting. But this is ancient history at
This
this
is
point.
ancient history, and throughout the games, I don't remember which game it was, but there was one of the games where you kept finding League of One medallions all over the place. Interesting side note, there was supposed to be a character that they were planning on at one point. This was scrapped from the game. He was going to be a squad mate who would be descended from a League of One member and was seeking revenge or something.
How would you keep track of that for that long with such a short generation?
Which may be the reason they cut it.
It's just it's so hard to. I could understand having a rumor of for example, in certain family histories, there's always a rumor of your lineage of where you're actually from, and there's nothing to really verify it. And then you suddenly do 23andMe, and you realize, oh no, I'm not a Cherokee princess descendant like
Right.
my great grandpa claimed. I'm just
I don't know. Maybe that's
something
why they
else,
cut it, because
yeah.
it was impractical. But it's an interesting idea for a character, at least, though.
yeah.
So from 300 BCE until 0 CE,
Wow.
we have a bunch of different races that make contact with or are found by the Asari and the Solarians.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dive too deeply into all of these races because there has to be stuff for people to find in the games.
Right.
That's the crux of what people are telling you in the games when you're talking to them, in the first game especially, is what's your race?
Yeah, it's a lot of
Which is
explaining exactly what the world is, because the idea is that it's very special for humans to have a place on the Citadel, let alone as high as they finally get when they get there.
So we're just going to quickly run through a few of these. And the ones that kind of everyone kind of knows that make contact during this era are the Volus, the Batarians, the Elcor, the Quarian, and the Hanar. And we'll go through each of those really quickly here.
Yay! I'm excited to talk about these. I love the aliens they made for this world. They're
really good, yeah.
And the cultures are they're a little monoculture-y sometimes, but they're very well developed.
I'm not going to dive into the cultures too much, actually. We're just going to give a few words on each one so people know what we're talking about when we get to them next time if they come up.
Okay.
So the Volus are ammonia-breathing bipeds. They're kind of short little roly-poly dudes from the high-pressure planet called Irun.
The joke with them is that they're all about the profit, but
they did the Unified Banking Act for the Citadel.
But yet they are physically inept.
Yeah.
Like, they're just nothing, there's nothing special about, you will never be able to fight as a Volus unless you're playing certain multiplayers, and then it's just kind of funny.
Batarians are four-eyed humanoids native to Karshan. Most Batarians dealt with in the games are criminals and mercs, but they are not representative of the average Batarian, who is forbidden travel from their territory by their own government. I was unaware of that.
The Batarians are pretty much kind of like on planet Earth. We do have places where we restrict movement of certain people to specific parts of their native land. And there are usually long histories as to why this happens. Yeah. And it's a very touchy subject. So as it is, they don't talk about why the Batarians have that fate befallen to them. And if you do find them in certain areas, it's almost like
refugees or criminals.
Or they have their own special neighborhood that only the Batarians stay in. And it's very, it feels awkward. And it's just kind of like a surface level of there's something off here, but you can't really break through it because they're unfortunately not extrapolated on in that sense.
The Elcor, quadrupedal, slow-moving, and ponderous from the high-gravity world of Dakuna. Now, I figured you would want to dive into this one more, so I didn't describe too much.
The Elcor are my favorite because they are so subtle in expressing their emotions that when speaking to other humans, they have to put...
Other races, not humans.
Well, they're speaking... Well, yeah, not only humans, but other races. You're correct. They have to explain what their emotion is. And so they will have to say things in front of them like with disdain or excited glee or
coquettishly,
which it is so bad. The best part is I think there's one part where there is an Elcor that is actually trying to lie to you. And it basically, because of the way that they have to explain how they're emoting, they literally say something to the expect of them with trepidation and essentially reveals through their adjectives how that they're withholding information.
But no, the Elcor are great.
There's also, isn't there an Elcor that's smoking a cigar?
In Mass Effect 2.
And you guys, like the Elcors, like they don't have a traditional mouth, so it's kind of more like a gill feature thing. So like in between one of its four slits of gills, it just has this cigar going back and forth. And they're these big honking tall... Like they almost look like if
front legs are larger than the back legs,
it's
so
almost
they kind of
like
have a slope to them.
If an elephant, a giraffe, and a concrete pillar had their genetics spliced together, that's an Elcor.
All right, let's move on. So the Quarians, nomadic bipedal species exiled from their homeworld of Rannoch. Due to their time on the migrant fleet, which is how they move from place to place, they have to wear enviro suits. Surprisingly, you never see them outside of them.
As much as we thought we would at the third game, it doesn't quite
They did redo that picture, by the way.
Oh, cool. So
people gave them so much flack for doing what every company does. You grab an image and you modify it. That is what stock art is for.
I don't understand. I think it's just that there was so much investment in that specific character that they wanted it to be special. But the thing I like about the Quarians is the representation of essentially a nomadic culture continuing in space.
Wait until we eventually get to Mass Effect Ascension.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff on the Quarian fleet there.
And an interesting choice to essentially, unlike other nomadic cultures where it's kind of like they were pushed out by an invading force. It is essentially when you first meet your first Quarian in the first game that essentially the way she describes the story, it's almost like they blame themselves for their exile.
And the last race we're going to dip into here is the Hanar from the ocean planet of Kaje. Hanar are basically giant jellyfish who actually worship the Protheans, whom they call the Enkindlers, because the Protheans gave them the gift of language.
If you ever wondered why there's a gif of Shepard going, because it's a big stupid jellyfish, the Hanar is why. They're just one of the funkiest looking dudes.
Oh, I love the Hanar.
Yeah, I mean,
all the races are great.
Yes.
So the year 1 of the Common Era.
Okay.
Solarian explorers open a long dormant mass relay, finding themselves in Maskim Sul, home system of the Rachni.
Oh, the Rachni.
The Rachni are a hostile, hive-minded insectoid race from the tidally locked planet of Suen in the Maskim Sul system. I love tidally locked planets when it's a home for a race, because the only place on that whole planet that will be habitable is on the Terminator. So tidally locked planet, if you don't know, I know you know.
Yeah.
But if you, dear listener, do not know, is when a planet is locked to its star. So one side is always facing the star, one side is always facing away from the star. So you have one side that's boiling hot or hot, one side that's really cold. So life only kind of can start, if it starts at all, on the Terminator, which is the point between those two.
It's also you could call it the Twilight Zone. Like, literally, that is the Twilight Zone. And the reason I think of it that way is because in second grade, that's how a teacher described it to me. And I remember thinking I didn't know that, like, oh, that's where the TV show name came from. Because believe me, at second grade, I had watched a couple episodes or two of Twilight Zone.
Don't know if that's appropriate for a second grader, but
I was a weird second grader.
So the Rachni, at this point, were already spacefaring. They had set foot on Kashaptu, which is another planet in their system, finding extensive deposits of element 0, and started doing research on these.
Interesting.
Like, they're not dumb insects.
And here's the thing. I wish in the third game they didn't present the Rachni as intelligently as they should have, which stinks, because in the first game they do, and it's very, very compelling.
Yeah. So the Rachni capture the Solarian team and use the Solarian FTL drives and their own understanding of element 0 from their own research.
Yeah.
To basically reverse engineer the Solarian ships and make their own FTL ships. FTL is faster than light, if I haven't mentioned that already.
That is not an alien race you want to accidentally bump into.
And now there's a no longer dormant relay. So, able to travel the relay network, they move through the galaxy rapidly and begin to overtake systems, beginning the Rachni Wars.
Yeah, and hive minds are a lot of species survive because of individual choice. But when you're talking about a war with a hive mind, any plot like, you know, the Borg in Star Trek, of something like that, will definitely teach you as to why that is such a formidable opponent.
So negotiation is nearly impossible for the reason you mentioned. It's a hive mind, and the Rachni Queens are deep in hostile territory, too remote for any diplomatic mission to succeed.
Right. You'd have to put a lot of trust that you would get there alive.
Yeah. And these wars go on for a long time.
Centuries, possibly?
Around 80 CE, the Solarians are still fighting this and discover the primitive Krogan. Now, the Krogan are walking juggernauts who live on the extremely hostile planet of Tuchanka.
Which we like to also call Reptile World, because that's an in-joke for us and our friends.
When we would play Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, one of our friends would play Krogan once in a while, and once in a while, he would just yell out, "For Reptile World!"
For Reptile World! Because they yell out, "For Tuchanka!"
Yeah.
Because they're the meathead culture kind of race, when at least the guys that you meet out there,
The Solarians uplift the Krogan, basically bringing them up from primitive people to spacefaring.
And this is going to be very interesting, and then you'll realize why certain
sci-fi shows have
prime directives, particularly.
And basically they do this intending for the Krogan to take on the Rachni. In 300 CE, so we went from 1 CE to 300 CE, the Rachni are finally declared extinct.
Wait, 1 there was a brief in 80 we met the Krogan,
Yeah.
and then in 300.
The Rachni are finally declared extinct.
So even though we got our important chess piece in 80, it took basically 220 years.
Well, that's getting rid of all of them.
Yeah, and let's think about this. We didn't think, at least, and I'm saying we as in like if I was part of this whole galactic culture. Right. But this whole galactic culture outside of the Rachni felt that they were so dangerous that extermination was the only way to deal with this intelligent, formidable force.
Right.
That feels a little prejudice to me. Prejudicial.
Also, to point out, we're talking about a government.
Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that only like 1% of the Milky Way is considered Citadel space.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
It's just all around these mass relays. So once you go outside of those mass relays for any real distance, you kind of start losing this ability. So anyway, 300 CE, the Rachni are extinct, and the Citadel grants the Krogan the reclaimed Rachni worlds and some Citadel non-hostile worlds for their own in recognition of this service and their sacrifice.
Okay.
Free of the pressures on them from Tuchanka, the Krogan population explodes.
Yeah, so part of the reason that the Krogan have this warfare culture is because they come from a planet that is hostile to live on.
It's kind of weird. I read this earlier today, actually, when I was redoing my last-minute research, that the Krogan are a prey species.
Yes.
Look at how their eyes are. They have a 240-degree field of vision.
I've heard this before. Yeah, but they're so intelligent. But when you think about it, Mystic, there's reason to believe that we as humans, for a long time, were the same way. And because we were never always the biggest or the strongest, but we were the smartest, and we also were in groups. And over time, we became more of a predatory species. And I feel like that's kind of the same evolution the Krogan did. But you're right. I've heard that before.
Yeah,
that they're a prey species.
As a apex predator in some ways,
yeah.
Spoilers here, we do go to their planet, and it has basically amazingly huge predators on it.
So if you don't mind
it's Tremors.
If you don't mind me mentioning this, in the second game, there is a companion of yours that has to go back there and essentially has to go through specific traditions. And a lot of those traditions involve taking on the hostile creatures that are native to Tuchanka. Oh my God. Yes, they are a prey species because there are so many ridiculous, fantastical beasts on Tuchanka.
So between 300 CE and 700 CE, the Krogan started to expand their territory.
Right.
Fearing the rapid expansion, in 693 CE, the Council formed the Special Tactics and Reconnaissance Branch, aka Spectres, Special Forces operatives, and they are beholden only to the Council. Their primary responsibility is to preserve galactic stability by whatever means necessary.
It's kind of like the Secret Service for the President, even though the Secret Service are actually part of the Department of the Treasury.
Yeah.
So
why the name works in English is anybody's guess.
What name works in
Special Tactics and Reconnaissance, aka Spectres. Like, it just feels weird that it works perfectly fine in English.
I feel like this is just a translation thing where it just
which is fair. Star Trek does the same thing all the time.
Dude, Farscape did it perfectly. So
Bilo Gurgi, a Solarian operative, is appointed the first Spectre by the Citadel Council. 700 CE, Krogan warlords leverage veterans of the Rachni Wars to annex territory from the other races in Citadel space.
Oof.
Eventually, the Council demands withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lucia, but the Krogan refuse.
Right.
A preemptive strike is made on Krogan infrastructures by the Spectres. The Krogan rebellions begin. Get ready for history to repeat itself a little bit. The Citadel Council makes first contact with the Turians, a bipedal, almost avian race, though lacking feathers and wings. Their faces do have that distinct quality, though.
They're more like what we thought dinosaurs looked like before we realized dinosaurs probably had feathers.
But bipedal and humanoid.
Yes.
But not? It's weird. Good alien design, though.
Yes, very good alien design.
So they made contact with the Turians around this time and persuade them to aid in the war. This doesn't go as badly this time, though. After the Krogan respond to the initial Turian offensive by devastating Turian colonies with weapons of mass destruction, the Turians vow to stop the Krogan from ever becoming a threat again.
And I want to say probably part of the reason that this worked out okay is because the Turians were not as less developed, I think, as the Krogans were when they
were
had
not.
first contact.
Before this point, the Turians had already had a unification war.
Yeah.
Where a lot of their more xenophobic and isolationist groups had already fought each other.
Right.
This was before they made first contact.
Right.
So,
and in addition, Turian culture has very much an emphasis on meritocracy and clear hierarchy. And and as much as Krogans do have hierarchical structures,
yeah.
I feel like it's much more of organic, communal setup for that, whereas it is a very meticulous, almost quantitatively rated idea for the Turians. And I think that helps them when it comes to understanding how the civilization surrounding the Citadel was structured by the time they're brought into Citadel affairs.
Yeah. 710 CE, the Turians realize that the problem with the Krogan will never go away as long as they can replenish their numbers. Mm-hmm. And so the Turians release a Solarian-engineered bioweapon called the genophage, which severely reduces the offspring viability for the Krogan.
And again, this is why we have something called a prime directive in Star Trek, because this is why you don't...
even with the prime directive, there have been times when Starfleet has used bioweapons, and I can't really explain more than that because you haven't seen the rest of the series.
No, I haven't. Yeah, and that's fair. I understand. I have to do a lot more catching up to do with that. But I'm talking about Next Generation. I'm not talking about Deep Space Nine where it gets messy. Deep Space Nine is specifically where Federation politics get messy.
Where it gets real, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, I'm not even gonna. But if we're merely talking about ideals and dreams and hopes of what we should be doing as civilized species of the universe, there's a reason why if a race is not at a certain point, maybe you don't
jump them forward 1,000 years.
Because and then essentially it almost puts them in a sense of there will always be serving. There's no way to pay back for that almost in an ethical way. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to explain?
We'll end our timeline jaunt here at 900 CE with the Turians being made a member of the Citadel Council alongside the Asari and the Solarians. Mm-hmm. So the Turians saw humanity activating Relay 314.
Right, and they were like, oh, this is our job. Our job
which had been dormant.
We're here to shut this stuff down.
Right. So this, activating these dormant relays has been forbidden by Citadel law since the Rachni War for a very good reason.
Yes, exactly.
So the First Contact War that we have is only a few months.
And I would think any First Contact War would be like that. And I'll be honest, fellow humans, we'll be lucky if we survive.
Which is actually, we can cover that actually a little bit next time in a little prelude. Because, so Mass Effect Revelation starts with John Grissom going to Arcturus and him interviewing cadet, N7 recruits and stuff.
Okay.
And there's a great line that we can touch on later about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get too deep into the book today. But
fair.
But next time we'll zero in on David Anderson and his life after First Contact as he tries out for the Spectres himself.
Yes.
And runs up against a Turian Spectre named Saren.
Yeah, and for those of you who know the series, you know why all of this is so important and consequential. Oh my lord.
So we'll do that next time when we do Mass Effect Revelation.
I'm excited. I haven't read any of the Mass Effect books. This is different from Dragon Age where I know more than I should.
So we'll do that next time.
Yeah. And you did mention some stuff I didn't know, Mystic, because I feel like when it comes to BioWare series, Dragon Age is my jam and Mass Effect is your jam. Not like...
Well, the thing is, I didn't want to jump in because Mass Effect Legendary has just come out.
Yeah.
In fact, we have to get it for the stream next week.
Yay! Watch me stream it. I actually know how to play this game, guys.
We can have you go play Adam Jensen again. who's from Deus Ex, the monotone cyborg.
Well, as long as I don't do any more sneaking, because that wasn't fun for anybody to watch.
So anyway, we'll cover David Anderson and Mass Effect Revelation next episode.
Yeah.
Until then, thank you for listening.
Yes.
And if you're going to, please enjoy Mass Effect Legendary, because we're going to.
Oh my gosh. And it is worth your time. If you've played it before, it's worth playing again, because it's just like rereading a good book. It's going to be very satisfying. And if you haven't played it before, it is Mass Effect, especially the first one, was a great leap forward in the ideas of what a video game could do in terms of storytelling, world building, and exploration. Mm-hmm. On the AAA setting, I should say, in particular.
But anyway, we'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening so much.
Bye.
Bye.